Big time fight at heavyweight in our co-main event this weekend. Matt, really looking forward to it. We have the former main eventer, I can say that, in Walt Harris, the big ticket, taking on Marcin Tybura. And while I don't think that's a great nickname, I do think Marcin Tybura is one of the toughest outs in this division because he holds the one key that a lot of men just can't figure out. This guy will lay, he will pray, he will wrestle you, and when he gets on top, he is a big problem. Just ask former All-Pro Greg Hardy his last time out. For Tybura, it's pretty well the same game plan every time out. Yeah, he adds a little wrinkle here, adds a little wrinkle there in terms of his striking, but his bread and butter certainly his takedown abilities, and he's taking on one of the biggest first-round power threats in this division in Walt Harris, who, after that first round, is 2-6-1 in his career. And again, the one, it was a fight. It happened. And if you look at his overall body of work, he has a no contest that ultimately would have been a win. A little bit of a failed drug test against Andrei Arlovski. If you look at it in terms of a draw, I mean, a long time ago. So if you do look at it, it is tricky that way. But again, the losses, Jared Rosholt, Nikita Krylov, Soa Paleli, Shamil Abdurakhimov, Fabrizio Verdum on short notice, Mark Godbeer, illegal kick, Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov his last two times out. So for Harris, really tough level of competition that way. The wins, Oleinik, Spivak. You got to think that Spivak win holds a little bit of water going into this one.
And you would have to assume that Walt Harris must have a little bit of confidence coming into this matchup, because like you had mentioned, the two opponents on his record that most similarly match up with Marcin Tybura, I would say are Alexei Oleinik and Sergei Spivak. And yes, I would say Oleinik's kind of to the higher end of Marcin Tybura and Spivak's to the lower end of a Marcin Tybura, but they're still in the same category, and you know what you're going to get from them. Both those guys, or really all three, can close the distance with strikes, and you know what they're going to try to do. They want to get their hands around you and go for the takedown. With Marcin Tybura, it's weird, and really, both fighters have their opponent's Achilles heel, if you will, because Marcin Tybura, he can eat big power shots and then get takedowns, and for Walt Harris, he can sometimes defend takedowns and land big power shots to his opponents before they get more takedowns. It's really one of those fights that just comes down to, can Walt Harris knock out Marcin Tybura before Marcin Tybura can get a takedown on Walt Harris? And it's weird, because Marcin Tybura has found himself in similar fights like this, and it just feels like the power threat just increases ever so slightly every single time out. Like, Greg Hardy, what's he good at? Well, he's got pretty good power in his hands. He is a bit of a fast starter. He's not really going to be there to knock you out in the second and third round, but you have to worry about his hands in the first round. Sounds a lot like Walt Harris, but I will admit that Walt Harris is a much more refined version of what Greg Hardy brings to the table. Walt Harris, technically, he does throw really nice straight shots, and he does have really good power, but the thing with Walt Harris is, he really is the definition of a first-round heavyweight fighter. I look at Walt Harris, very similar to how I looked at Shane Carwin. Shane Carwin, probably not a name you thought you were going to hear today. Because Shane Carwin, for the longest time, that was the stat. You heard that, well, Shane Carwin's longest fight's only 2 minutes, and that's great. But it is a bit of a double-sided sword, because, yeah, it's great, you're going to knock everyone out so fast, but it also means I have no idea how good your cardio is past 120 seconds, and that's not really that long of a time. So, for Walt Harris, I'm just asking myself, do I think he can land that big shot like he did against Alexei Oleinik, flying knee into the left straight? I don't think he can, and I really do think that Marcin Tybura has figured out a way to incorporate, yes, he doesn't have the best striking in the world, but he can strike into the clinch, and once he does get fights into the clinch, yeah, they might not always be the most exciting, but like, even look back at the Ben Rothwell fight, Marcin Tybura is not just a guy who's going to wait in the clinch and not do anything with the position. He can have some good ground and pound off with it. He's got really good uppercuts in the clinch too. He makes use of the position. He's not just getting in the position to stall, and that's what I like about Marcin Tybura. As heavyweights go, I would say he's on the higher end for cardio, and if he can just get out of that first round and make this an ugly fight, I really do think Tybur can make this a really ugly performance, but a performance that he needs to get the win over Walt Harris.
Walt Harris, not one of those guys that has the biggest MMA background coming into the sport, and you're going to hear it, athletic, good striker, power threat for sure. For Tybura, the guy's had way more experience, former M1 champ, and then you look at it like, what, 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, we would have written him off. He was 1-4 in a 5-fight stretch, losing to Verdum, Lewis, beating Struve, losing to Abdurakhimov, losing to Augusto Sakai. Since then, Spivak, Grecian, Rothwell, Hardy. Now, Grecian was on short notice. He came in up a weight class, but the Rothwell fight, he looked good. The Hardy fight, he looked great. He was supposed to fight Blagoy Ivanov earlier on this year. It fell out due to an Ivanov injury. Now you get Walt Harris. Matt, I have a hard time seeing Walt Harris winning other than, again, by knockout, like a lot of people have said. So we threw this one out there over in the comments section, YouTube community tab. You got to check these out. Top comment, Angelo Kaz saying Tybura is underrated. Tybura, TKO round 3. YOLO the reindeer. Harris either KOs him early or Tybura wrestles his way to a, you hate to say it, somewhat boring decision. Jack Reinhardt saying, man, I would love to see Harris win. I'm a big fan of him. But out of the total votes, we got 1,100 over in the community tab. 68% going with Tybura, 32% with Harris. And if I can give you the odds quickly, Matt, Harris open a plus 130 underdog. He's about a plus 141. Tybura open a minus 150. He's a minus 171.
So just to piggyback off the comment of if Tybura wrestles, it could be a somewhat boring decision. I actually think if Tybura wrestles, that's his best path to get a finish. I don't think Walt Harris has a very good ability to get back up to his feet. And that's really why I'm picking Marcin Tybura. I feel like this is one of those fights where his one takedown is all Marcin Tybura needs. Because if Walt Harris is struggling to get back up to his feet, and he's just eating ground and pound shots, they might not even have to be the hardest shots in the world. Just the accumulation of them might convince the ref to jump in there and stop the fight. I do think Marcin Tybura has that style of ground and pound where, if you look at the Greg Hardy fight, it's not like he was khabibing him into the ground where you're like, oh my goodness, I'm concerned. It was just such an accumulation of volume, and the fact that Tybura is one of those rare heavyweights who, yes, it's ridiculous to say, but he kind of weaponizes his pace. He can out-tire the majority of other heavyweights out there, and a third round against Marcin Tybura is not a place that you want to find yourself, because he does have that suffocating style that really does lend itself well to an extended fight in the heavyweight division, and for all those reasons, I do feel quite confidently picking Marcin Tybura in this fight.
And maybe if you get a Walt Harris situation like when he fought Overeem in that main event where it's the end of the first round, Harris had a big round, maybe you look at the live line. But yeah, I like Tybura in this fight as well for the performance that we've seen lately. But again, you worry about that opening wave, and then after that, it's not, you can't be carefree, but you can kind of let off the gas a little bit, and you don't have to be as worried. So yeah, Matt, both of us going with Poland's Marcin Tybura to bring the win back for the home country. Really looking forward to that fight. But we also have a big one in the main event. Rozenstruik taking on Sakai. You're not going to want to miss those. Keep locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.